During quarantine, my toxic ex wouldn't stop spamming me with guilt trips and long essays about how much he missed me. I blocked him everywhere, except one app. That's when I came up with the pettiest, most satisfying revenge of my life. Every time he texted me, I destroyed his favorite Netflix shows with spoilers until he finally broke. The first thing I remember about quarantine isn't the silence. It's the clock. Tick, tick, tick. The sound of my living room clock carried louder than ever before, filling the air in ways I never noticed before March 2020. I never knew a clock could feel like a taunt, like a constant reminder that I was stuck. I wasn't supposed to be counting seconds of my life inside these four walls. I was supposed to be working, commuting, meeting friends, planning trips. Instead, I was pacing between my kitchen and couch, holding my phone like it was some kind of lifeline to a reality that no longer existed. At first, quarantine felt like a snow day that wouldn't end. Canceled plans, staying in pajamas all day, ordering food without guilt. It almost felt like a weird kind of treat. But by week 2, the air grew heavy. My apartment shrank smaller every day, and the silence pressed in until even the refrigerator's hum sounded like company. I told myself I'd use the time to get productive, read the stack of books collecting dust, start yoga, maybe even learn how to bake bread like every influencer on Instagram. But the truth was, most days I sat curled on my couch, wrapped in the same blanket, clicking next episode on Netflix until my eyes burned. The outside world felt distant. My phone was my window. Endless doom scrolling, infection numbers rising, news anchors panicking, politicians fumbling their speeches. Fear leaked through the screen like poison. Every time I turned the news off, I felt a hollow ache in my chest, like the world outside had disappeared and I was the only one left alive. The silence made me think too much. I thought about my friends, the ones I hadn't hugged in weeks. I thought about my parents, both high risk, who I couldn't even visit. And worst of all, I thought about him. My ex. I hated that quarantine gave my brain time to wander down those twisted paths. Normally, I kept myself too busy to dwell on the past, too surrounded by noise and distractions to let his face sneak into my thoughts. But now, with nothing but empty hours stretching out endlessly, memories slipped in like ghosts. His voice, his words, his manipulation, they replayed in my head, echoing with the same venom as the first time he spat them. I tried to shut it out. I put on headphones, blared music, binged shows, scrolled endlessly through TikTok. But every night, when the screens dimmed and the apartment lay still, his shadow came crawling back. Quarantine wasn't just about avoiding a virus. For me, it was about avoiding my own mind. Days melted together. The calendar lost meaning. Monday looked like Saturday. I stopped putting on real clothes, living in sweatpants, my hair tied in a permanent messy bun. Meals blurred, sleep blurred, and sometimes I had to check my phone to even remember what day it was. One morning, I opened my curtains and stared at the street below. It was empty. Not a single car, not a single pedestrian. Just a stray cat slipping along the curb like it owned the world. The air felt wrong, like the world had been put on pause, like someone had muted the soundtrack of life. That's when the loneliness really hit me. Not the kind you feel when you don't have plans on a Friday night, but the kind that sinks deep into your bones. The kind that makes you crave any form of human interaction, even if it's just a hey from a barista or a stranger brushing past you on the sidewalk. I missed the little things I'd taken for granted. The weight of a shopping basket at the grocery store, the sound of laughter drifting from a cafe, the way the city buzzed with energy. Now everything was still. Dead. I tried to call my friends more, but everyone was going through their own kind of survival. Some days they were too tired to talk. Other days I was. Conversations felt repetitive. How are you holding up? Same as yesterday. Can you believe this is happening? It was as if the world had shrunk down to the size of my apartment, and everyone else was trapped in their own tiny cages too far away to reach. So I filled the silence with Netflix. There's something intoxicating about letting other people's chaos drown out your own. While the world outside crumbled, I lost myself in other lives. Marty Bird laundering money in Ozark. Joe Exotic and his tigers spiraling into madness in Tiger King. The professor's voice leading a rebellion in Money Heist. Fiction became my reality. Their disasters became my escape. Sometimes, I watched until the sun came up. My blinds would glow with early morning light, and I'd realize I hadn't moved in hours. My body ached from sitting, my eyes throbbed, but I still hit play next episode. Anything to avoid the silence. Anything to avoid my thoughts. And yet, No matter how many shows I devoured, no matter how many hours I wasted, I couldn't completely escape him. My ex was like static buzzing at the edges of my mind, waiting for the quiet to slip in. I told myself I was over him, that I had moved on, that he no longer had power over me. But isolation has a way of peeling back the lies you tell yourself. Alone, with nowhere to go and no one to distract me, I started admitting things I didn't want to. He had left scars, deep ones. And in the silence of quarantine, I felt them ache again. I'll never forget one particular night. I was lying on the couch, wrapped in my blanket cocoon, half asleep as Stranger Things flickered on the screen. The characters were running through the dark, monsters closing in, when suddenly the electricity outside my window flickered. For a split second, the screen went black. The apartment went still. In that moment, my chest tightened. It wasn't the power outage. It was the memory. The same kind of gut-deep panic I used to feel whenever my ex's name lit up my phone. That sharp sting of dread, that instinct to freeze. I stared at the blank screen, and for the first time since quarantine started, I whispered his name aloud. It hung in the air, ugly and heavy. The power flicked back on. The show resumed, and I tried to shove the thought away. But deep down, I knew the silence was pulling him closer. That was quarantine. Silence, screens, memories, and ghosts of things I thought I'd buried. What I didn't know, what I couldn't know then, was that silence wasn't the worst of it. Because silence could be broken. And soon enough it would be. Not by the world reopening. Not by friends or family. But by him. Before quarantine. Before the silence. Before I ever learned how much peace could cost. There was him. Sometimes I wonder if I should call him by name. Maybe if I spell it out, it'll feel less like a wound and more like just history. But even now, even after all this time, even after I've told myself I don't care, his name tastes bitter on my tongue. So let's just call him what he really was, my mistake. I met him at a party I wasn't supposed to go to. Isn't that how these things always start? My friend had dragged me out on a rainy night, promising just one drink. I wasn't dressed up for it, just jeans, a sweater, hair half damp from the shower. And that's when I saw him. He had that kind of confidence that fills a room before he even opens his mouth. His smile looked carved, rehearsed, perfected. He wasn't just charming, he was magnetic. And when his eyes landed on me, I felt something sharp inside me click. Looking back, I think that's how it works with people like him. They don't choose you randomly. They scan the room, spot the person who looks just a little unsure, a little too eager to believe in magic, and they pounce. We talked all night. Or maybe he talked and I just listened, laughing at the right times, letting myself believe that someone like him, handsome, confident, seemingly interested, could really see me. When he asked for my number, my stomach fluttered like I'd just won something. I didn't know then that I'd actually lost. The beginning was a dream. It always is. Texts every morning, good morning, beautiful. Calls every night, tell me about your day, I love your voice. He showed up with coffee when I mentioned I was tired, with flowers when I mentioned I liked them, with gifts I didn't even ask for. It was intoxicating. People talk about love bombing like it's obvious, but when you're inside it, it doesn't feel like a bomb. It feels like sunlight after a long winter. It feels like maybe, just maybe, you've finally found someone who means it when they say they care. I told my friends I thought he was different. I told my mom I felt lucky. And for a while, I believed it. Then came the little shifts. The comments that slid in under the radar. You really going to wear that out? Do you always laugh that loud? I just don't like the way he looks at you. Maybe you shouldn't hang out with him anymore. At first, I brushed it off. Everyone has opinions, right? But the more time I spent with him, the more his voice replaced my own. I started questioning myself, my clothes, my friends, even my hobbies. He didn't forbid me from doing anything, not exactly. He just made me feel guilty enough to stop on my own. And guilt was his favorite weapon. When I didn't reply fast enough, he'd say, I guess I'm not that important to you. When I wanted space, he'd sigh, I just want to love you. Why are you pushing me away? When I tried to stand up for myself, he'd get quiet, cold, and punish me with silence until I caved. I learned quickly that it was easier to bend than to break. The fights started small. Then they grew. One night, I remember him yelling at me in my own apartment. Not because I'd done anything awful, not because I'd betrayed him, but because I didn't answer his call while I was showering. He said I didn't respect him. He said I was selfish. He said if you really loved me, you wouldn't make me feel this way. And I believed him. God, I hate admitting that now, but I did. I twisted myself into knots trying to be what he wanted, because the punishment for not being enough was unbearable. He'd alternate between cold distance and over-the-top affection. One day I'd be the villain ruining everything, the next I'd be his soulmate, the love of his life, the one person who got him. It was a cycle, and I was trapped inside it. Leaving him wasn't one clean break. It was dozens of little ones. The first time, I told him we weren't working out. He cried. He begged. He sent long paragraphs about how he couldn't live without me. And I went back. The second time, I blocked him for 2 weeks. He showed up at my job with flowers, telling me he'd changed, that therapy was helping, that he realized how much he hurt me. And I went back. The third time, he promised me the future I always wanted. He painted pictures of marriage, kids, a house, everything I dreamed of. And I went back. But each time, the cycle spun faster. The highs grew shorter. The lows grew darker. And eventually, even I couldn't deny that the person I had once loved no longer existed. Maybe he never did. Maybe I had just fallen for the mask. The final time I left, it wasn't dramatic. There were no screaming matches, no explosive finales. I just broke. Quietly. I stopped replying. I stopped showing up. I blocked him everywhere I could. And for the first time in months, I felt air in my lungs. It was shaky, fragile, but it was mine. By the time quarantine rolled around, I thought he was gone for good. I thought the ghost of him would fade. But ghosts don't care about doors or locks. They slip through cracks. They linger in silence. And as the world closed in, as the days bled together and the loneliness sharpened, I didn't know it yet, but he was already on his way back. Already planning his entrance. Already writing the first of those endless texts. Already preparing to make my apartment, my silence, my quarantine his stage. It started with a ding. One single notification. I didn't even look right away. By then, my phone was constantly buzzing. Group chats about quarantine, work updates, endless memes about toilet paper shortages. Another buzz hardly mattered. But when I picked it up and saw his name lighting up my screen, my stomach dropped. Him. I froze, my thumb hovering over the glass. It felt surreal. Like the ghost I'd been dreading had suddenly materialized in daylight. And just like that, quarantine stopped being about silence. It became about noise. His noise. The first message wasn't aggressive. It was soft. Almost tender. Hey. I know I'm probably the last person you want to hear from. I've been thinking about you. With everything going on, I don't know, it just feels wrong not to reach out. Are you okay? I stared at it, heart pounding. A dozen thoughts raced through me. Why now? Why not leave me alone? Why reopen wounds that had barely scabbed over? I didn't reply. Not because I didn't want to, but because I knew what came next. And I was right. The messages kept coming. Day after day, he sent paragraphs. I miss you so much. I can't stop thinking about you. Do you remember our trip to the lake? I still have that photo of you smiling in the sun. God, you were so beautiful. I'm scared. Everything feels like it's falling apart, and I don't know who else to turn to. Please, I just need to hear your voice. At first, they tugged at me. Against my better judgment. A part of me still remembered the early days, the warmth, the promises. But then the tone shifted. When I didn't answer, the guilt tripping began. So, I guess you don't care if I'm alive or dead. Wow. After everything we had, you can't even reply once? You must have someone else keeping you company during quarantine. That's the only explanation. The old patterns. The same poisonous rhythm. I knew them too well. Blocking him should have been easy. It was easy, technically. One button and he vanished. But here's the thing about toxic people. They find cracks. He had more than one number. He had more than one account. Every time I blocked one, another sprouted up. WhatsApp. Facebook Messenger. Instagram DMs. Even LinkedIn, for God's sake. And then, one day, he found the app I'd forgotten to lock down. It was Telegram. I didn't even remember downloading it. A friend had convinced me months before, swearing it was the next big thing, but I never used it. So it just sat there, buried in a folder on my phone, untouched. Until suddenly, there he was. At first, I laughed. I actually laughed. The absurdity of it, him crawling through every digital crack just to reach me, it was pathetic. But then the flood began. Ding, 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 ding. Every hour. Sometimes every minute. Walls of text, pouring out of him like poison. One night, I made the mistake of opening them. The words scrolled on and on. You can't just erase me. I know you still think about me. I know quarantine must be lonely, and I bet you miss the way I held you. No one will ever love you like I did. No one will ever put up with you the way I did. You'll realize one day that I was the best thing you had. My chest tightened. Not because I believed him, I didn't not anymore, but because of how familiar it all felt. The cadence, the guilt, the sharp little stabs at my worth. I slammed the phone face down on the table, my hand shaking. Days turned into weeks, and the spam didn't stop. If anything, it escalated. Sometimes he'd beg, "Please, I need you. Please just talk to me. I can't breathe without you." Sometimes he'd rage, "You heartless BTCH. How could you just abandon me like I was nothing?" Asterisk. Sometimes he'd play the victim. "Everyone else leaves me. I thought you were different. I guess I was wrong." The whiplash was exhausting. I couldn't step into my kitchen without wondering if my phone would light up. I couldn't sit down to watch a show without hearing the ding. It felt like being trapped in a cage with him again, except this time the bars weren't physical, they were digital. Then one night, after a particularly vicious string of messages, where he accused me of cheating, of being a cold-hearted monster, something inside me snapped. I remember pacing my living room, fists clenched, muttering to myself. I couldn't believe I was back here, months after clawing my way free, letting him worm his way into my peace again. And then my eyes fell on the TV screen. Netflix. I had been binging Money Heist at the time. I'd just finished the season finale, the kind of finale that leaves your jaw on the floor, heart racing, desperate to talk about it with someone. And suddenly an idea sparked. A wild, petty, deliciously cruel idea. If he wanted my attention so badly, if he wanted me to respond, then fine. I'd respond. But not with love. Not with guilt. Not with anything he wanted. I'd reply with pain. Not emotional pain. Not the kind he inflicted on me, but the kind of pain only a true TV addict could understand. Spoilers. The first time I did it, I thought it would just be a one-off. He'd sent another essay, 5 whole paragraphs about how I had ruined his life, how he couldn't sleep without me, how I'd regret this when I was old and alone. I skimmed it, rolled my eyes, and almost deleted the chat. But then that spark lit up again, the one I'd felt staring at my TV screen the night before. So instead of ignoring him, I typed out 3 little words. Nairobi dies, by the way. And I hit send. At first, I felt a twinge of guilt. Not because of him. He deserved far worse, but because I knew I had just ruined a massive plot twist in Money Heist. A twist I had screamed at my TV over just a night ago. But that guilt dissolved the moment his reply came. "What?" Followed by, "Are you serious? Did you just ruin that for me?" I laughed. Out loud. For the first time in weeks, the weight in my chest lifted. He'd wanted to drag me back into his chaos, but instead, I'd dragged him into mine. The next day, another essay arrived. "I don't get how you can ignore me like this. I gave you everything. You'll never find someone who loves you the way I did. One day you'll realize what you lost." Normally, that kind of message would have sunk its claws into me, but not this time. This time, I typed back. "Barb dies in Stranger Things Season 1, but they don't even bother to save her. Everyone moves on. Send." His reply was instant. "WTF is wrong with you? I was literally about to start that show tonight." I couldn't stop grinning. That became the game. Every time he tried to guilt me, I spoiled something new. Him. "I can't believe you abandoned me during a global crisis." Me. "Carol Baskin probably killed her husband. Everyone knows." Him. "Don't you ever think about how much I loved you?" Me. "Walter White dies in the Breaking Bad finale. It's been out for years, you're late." Him. "I can't breathe without you. I can't eat, I can't sleep." Me. "Hannah leaves 13 tapes in 13 Reasons Why. That's the whole premise. Now you don't even need to watch." It was beautiful. Petty. Glorious. At first he thought I was joking. He kept messaging, trying to steer the conversation back to him, trying to get me to cave. But when I spoiled Ozark's finale, Maya arrests Navarro, but then Darlene gets shot point blank. Oh, and Wendy becomes the real monster. He lost it. "What is your problem? Why are you doing this? You know I watch these shows. This is psychotic behavior, do you realize that?" I snorted. Psychotic? Coming from him? If anything, I was finally sane. Days turned into a pattern. He'd send walls of text dripping with guilt. I'd skim the first few lines, roll my eyes, and then dig into my spoiler arsenal. Me. Robin comes out in Stranger Things 3. It's actually a really sweet scene. Me. Joe Exotic goes to prison. The memes were better than the show, honestly. Me. Tokyo narrates the whole story from the grave. She dies too. Each time his rage sharpened. Stop. Just stop. You're ruining everything for me. Why are you being so cruel? You're a horrible person. But the more he raged, the lighter I felt. For the first time in our twisted history, I had the power. He couldn't manipulate me, couldn't guilt me, couldn't pull me back in. Every message he sent only gave me another chance to twist the knife. And the best part? He had no idea when I'd strike. The final straw came 2 weeks later. He sent another midnight essay, probably drunk, definitely pathetic. It was the longest one yet. He wrote about how quarantine was killing him, how no one understood him like I did, how maybe it would be better if he just ended it all. And in the past, that kind of message would have wrecked me. I would have panicked, called him, begged him not to hurt himself, carried his weight until my knees buckled. But this time, I scrolled to the bottom of his wall of text and typed, Iron Man dies in Endgame. He saves everyone, but he dies. And Captain America gets old. Send. The typing bubble appeared, then disappeared, then appeared again. Finally, one message came through. You're sick. Don't ever contact me again. And just like that, the flood stopped. For the first time in months, maybe years, my phone was quiet. Not the suffocating silence of quarantine. Not the haunted silence of my own thoughts. But the peace of knowing that he was finally gone. All it took was a few spoilers. And God, it was worth it. The first morning without his messages felt strange. I woke up, rolled over, and reached for my phone out of habit. My eyes blinked against the brightness as I checked my notifications. Group chats, news alerts, the usual buzz. But no walls of text. No, I miss you. No, you ruined me. No guilt, no manipulation. For a second, I thought maybe he was just regrouping. That he'd come back with a new number, a new account, another desperate essay. But as hours turned into days, the silence stayed. And this time, it wasn't heavy. This silence felt like oxygen. It was almost funny, really. After months of being trapped in a cycle of his words, all it took was a handful of Netflix spoilers to finally make him vanish. The same man who swore he couldn't live without me, who claimed I was his only lifeline, had been defeated by TV shows. Petty? Absolutely. Effective? Without a doubt. I didn't regret a single ruined twist. Without his noise filling my phone, quarantine shifted. The days were still slow, the nights still too quiet, but something in me felt lighter. I could actually focus on the shows I was watching without wondering if another essay was about to crash into my screen. I could scroll through memes without his shadow lurking at the top of my inbox. Most of all, I could finally start hearing my own thoughts again. For weeks, I had drowned in his chaos. Every ding of my phone had been like a reminder that no matter how far I ran, he'd always find me. But now I felt the walls around me expand. My apartment didn't feel like a cage anymore. It felt like mine. I wish I could say I never thought about him again. That would be a neat ending, wouldn't it? But the truth is, healing doesn't work like that. Some nights, lying on my couch with Netflix flickering in the background, I still thought about him. The good parts, the bad parts, the parts one still didn't understand. But the difference was, those thoughts didn't control me anymore. They didn't weigh me down. He had become background noise. And the louder my own laughter, my own routines, my own peace became, the quieter his ghost grew. Looking back, I realized something important. Revenge doesn't always have to be grand. It doesn't have to be dramatic or destructive. Sometimes, the sweetest revenge is as simple as taking away someone's power to hurt you and replacing it with something that makes you laugh. In my case, that was spoilers. Every text I sent wasn't just ruining a show for him. It was reclaiming a piece of myself. It was me saying, you don't control the narrative anymore. I do. And God, it felt good. By the time quarantine lifted, I had changed. Not just because of the pandemic, not just because of isolation, but because I had faced the ghost of him and finally won. The world outside had shifted, but so had I, stronger, sharper, a little pettier, maybe, but also freer. And sometimes, when I think about him somewhere out there, watching a show and bracing himself for a twist he already knows is coming, I smile. Because he wanted me to carry his weight forever. But instead, I gave him spoilers. And walked away lighter than ever. And that was my quarantine revenge on my toxic ex. Sometimes, the best way to deal with people who won't leave you alone isn't with anger, but with spoilers. Petty? Maybe. Satisfying? Absolutely. What about you? Have you ever gotten back at someone in a small but powerful way? Share your story in the comments, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and come back for more wild tales like this one.